Hello, I am doing a quick update. This is the progress I've made so far. It's huge from last night. I cannot believe how beautiful this is. I'm so glad I made a decision to move forward with this particular pattern. As you can see, my sweater number 20 is growing quite nicely. I am still using my Susan Bates. I am still using my little curvy doohickey, and I'm still using my stitch markers in order to help me keep pace. I am currently on row 26. I am so hoping that I can at least get to row 30 before I cut myself off. I decided to do my professional development at home today, and I'm just listening to an audiobook that's giving me some insights on how to teach the Constitution to my students, which has been really riveting. It's called "Allow Me to Retort: A Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution" by Eli Mistel or Mistel. I'm not too sure how he pronounces his last name, although he does say in the beginning of the book. This is a 6 hour, almost 7 hour audiobook that you can listen to. You can use one of your audiobooks credits, or you can purchase it between the price of $9.95 or $14.95. I think the prices range depending on where you're from. It's really interesting, his interpretation of the Constitution and how it applies in today's modern terms. I've been enjoying listening to it. I do my best whenever I'm teaching to give my students multiple perspectives in order to ensure that they have the full understanding of a situation, so that way at the end of the day they can form their own conclusions. I don't want to tell them what conclusions they should have. I want to give them multiple resources in order to do so. So my hope is to take excerpts from the text and then share them with my students, in addition to additional excerpts. So since he is talking specifically about the Supreme Court, about the Constitution, I would give the way I do a lesson on the history of the Constitution, when looking at either the purpose of the Constitution, the impact of the Constitution, or whether or not another amendment could be made to the Constitution in our 21st century. What I always do is make sure that my students have a thorough understanding of the Constitution just by reading it and identifying what was happening at the time that led to the men, later women, I guess, if you're referring to the later amendments, for them to actually write the language that they did at the particular time. What was happening that maybe influenced the words that they use, the actions that they're trying to restrict or to ensure that people have or protect. So once they are successful in doing that thorough analysis of the Constitution, their next step is to then look at different views of the Constitution. So my students always read excerpts from the Federalist Papers, as well as an excerpt from Brutus I, which is an anti-Federalist response to the Federalist Papers. So after they're successful at reading that, they also take a time out to look at the background of various men, especially our founding fathers, who they were, how they made their money, where they were from, their academic background, if they had any, and their legal background, if they had any. And so once they have that full origin story, then we look at different Supreme Court cases. My favorite court case to do with my students is Marbury versus Madison, because that establishes judicial review and the fact that the Supreme Court is the main interpreter of the Constitution in itself. And so once they have a firm understanding of that particular court case, we then always look at what is the modern interpretation about the role of the Supreme Court. And so in order to do that, we look at various court cases. So because I teach AP Government and Politics as well, there are required Supreme Court cases that students must be familiar with. They must know the constitutional principle, the facts of the case, as well as the impact of the case, i.e. the significance. Once they are successful at doing the analysis of those required Supreme Court cases, we look at some of more recent cases that either the court would decide in one way based on our current courts, or should be decided a different way based on the previous courts. It really depends on which court case we're looking at. what I'm hoping to use with this particular text is the fact that he mentions his interpretation of several required cases that students have to do, as well as other non-required cases, such as the Miranda case and the Dobbs case. In AP Gov, students had to understand the constitutional principle of Roe v. Wade, but now that's no longer a required case because it's been overturned because of Dobbs. And so his interpretation of both cases, coupled with our current views around abortion, and when I say a current, both the conservative, liberal, and those who are in the middle, it gives us an opportunity to explore political ideology as well. So it's this amazing opportunity for students to truly form their own conclusion. And I have a lot of conservative students in my classroom, as well as those who consider themselves to be very liberal, and others who are just in the middle where they're not too sure where their ideology falls. And so my hope is that through interpretation of various court cases, as well as various viewpoints, because they have to look at what conservatives are saying as well. So in addition to reading excerpts from this particular book as well, I will try to find, I will pull from conservative resources. Fox News is usually my first go-to in terms of pulling a conservative viewpoint. I have used that other news channel that is, the name of it escapes me, Max. I think it's just called Max. Sometimes I will use speeches given by different political figures when they have spoke out about certain decisions made by the courts. And so once they have both the conservative views as well as the more liberal views, I put the task on them to find that moderate view, and they have to justify why that's a moderate view as well. And then once they're successful at synthesizing the viewpoints of all three, it's on them to form their own conclusion as well as their own opinion. Some instances, it's really impactful because they're able to say like, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, I didn't quite understand that. In other instances where it's just like, Ms. G, just tell me what I need to know and that's what I'll do. But I share all that is that although I'm home today, I really am glad that I took the time out to listen to this particular audiobook, because I've been thinking about how to incorporate it into my class, and now I have a lot of great ideas in mind for that as well. And as I am thinking about these various lessons, I am knitting away on this beautiful sweater number 20. As I mentioned before, this is made by My Favorite Knit Things, I think is the name. You would think after talking about this multiple times, I would know. But again, cannot deny it. It's a really, once you get into the rhythm of it, it becomes a little bit more intuitive. I've made one major mistake so far, and that's right here. In this particular section, I did the cable in the front instead of doing it in the back. And so that was my first big mistake. And my second big mistake was in this column here. I either dropped a stitch or didn't cast on enough. Okay, so I have to be quick because my 7-year-old just told me that he wants, I actually didn't hear what he wants, but he wants something. But anywho, this is the other column where I made a mistake. As I was saying, I think I dropped a stitch, or yeah, looking at it, I can see right here, this is a stitch that isn't fully there or whatnot, but I think it's going to felt into it and hopefully it'll be fine. So I ended up having to add a stitch to the column in order to maintain the stitch count that I needed in order to do the cable. But other than that, it's coming along really well. I don't really mind this little mistake here at the bottom because it's at the just going to be towards the top of the sweater. When I'm ready to do the front, I will be picking up stitches up here, and this is just working towards the bottom of it. A lot of I shouldn't say a lot of there are some drop shoulder patterns that require you to do this bell shape first for the back. Then you pick up stitches for one shoulder, then you pick up stitches for the second shoulder, and then you join it around, and then you work the pattern in around until the conclusion of it. And that's been my noticing of a typical drop shoulder pattern. There are some, and then with raglan, what I'm noticing is that for some raglans, you are starting with the collar and then you're doing your increasing, whether it's a round yoke or just I call it like a triangle yoke, and then you have that. So really am enjoying this. It's hard to put down because I'm curious to how it's going to grow. But I do need to do 2 inches on the weekender light. I made a little schedule for myself. And so here is my schedule. I hope you can see that. Yeah, there it is. Oh, I realize it's backwards. So yesterday was Monday. I did 9 rows of this, and then I worked on the collar of my zipper sweater for my son, and I was able to finish all the German short rows. And so the only thing I have left to do is just knit back and forth for a particular length before I can join in around for that one. For today, the expectation was to do a minimum of 9 rows, and clearly I did more than 9. I would have been at row 18, but I'm at row 26 now. I probably will do a few more rows with that because I don't foresee myself having as much time tomorrow to work on this. So we'll see. After I do some additional work on this, then the next step is for me to work on my weekender light, and then tomorrow I'm going to be working on my tessellated vest. I'm going to be working on my red Copenhagen, which is a cardigan I'm making for myself. I then will continue working on this particular sweater number 20, and then I'm going to do some more inches on the weekender light. As I said before, my hope is that to finish this tessellated vest as well as the weekender light by the end of this month. And my goal is to spend quality time with both. Like Friday night is my Friday night knits. I usually hang out with a group of, just a small trio of individuals where we talk about our knitting and what's happening in our lives, and we work on our projects. So after I hang out with them, I then come home. My husband's responsible for dinner, so then I can spend quality time in this space to knit and watch all my podcasts. So that's what I'm doing this Friday. So I'm going to spend that bulk of that time on my tessellated vest, and my hope is that by the end of Friday or Saturday I can have my tessellated vest done, because I'm actually quite close to being finished. I only need to do the shoulders and the back part of it, and the back is just going back and forth. There's no major shaping that's happening in that section, at least I don't think so. From what I've read in the pattern, it doesn't look to be. It looks like I'm going to be doing a little shoulder shaping once I get to a certain length. And then on Sunday, my hope is to finish the back of this tessellated vest, because that's the back of sweater number 20, because that's what I'm working on right now. So I don't know. I think I might actually end up finishing it sooner, because I'm looking at the chart really quick, and it looks like it goes up to row 40 something, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It's not too clear on the chart because, as I said before, the numbers are really fuzzy. But we'll see. I'm going to keep going. So stay tuned.